Okay, Mr. Karl Bergen, Karl, Baywatch Bergemann, welcome to Mzansi MMA. To all the viewers out there, our top Muay Thai kickboxing athlete, our professional, set to headline at Thaiholics Fight Promotions Collision course, part 3, I think. It's Collision course?
Continental Collision, yeah.
Continental Collision, thank you.
Yeah.
First of all, congratulations on headlining such an awesome event. And obviously everybody's so excited to have fans back at the events, and obviously at a venue like Grand West. It just feels like we're slowly returning to, everything is getting back to normal again. So just tell us, how excited are you to be there, man?
Yeah, I'm super stoked. Obviously, I got to commentate on the last one, so it was great just to be in the venue. But you feel the crowd missing. You miss the voices, you miss that electricity, and when the guys are coming out, the music is pumping, you feel for them because it's so quiet. Like, how do you hype yourself up and walk out into a crowd is so much better. So yeah, it's going to be awesome. Supposed to be headlining, so it's going to be looking forward to it.
I can imagine. Karl, just tell us, for those other, obviously we spoke before, I interviewed you in 2020, I think, or last year, but for the fans who now never read the articles, watching for the first time, like I said, decorated Muay Thai kickboxing athlete who has traveled the world from, I think, from Zanzi to Gauruja, Brazil, to Chiang Mai, Thailand, Hamburg, Germany, and more. Just tell us, where exactly did it all start for Karl Bergemann? How did you get into kickboxing and to Muay Thai?
Yeah, so initially, it's going to sound quite strange, but I bumped into my crew while out jolling one night, and I was planning on doing some boxing just to get fit, because at the time I was playing semi-pro rugby, and all my coaches were telling me in the off season, go do boxing, it'll keep you fit, and you come into season, like with, the start of pre-season, it's always such a slog, guys are out of shape and just trying to get back into it. So I bumped into my coach, told him I knew he was training at the time and I wanted to get involved, just for the fitness, just to get fit for rugby. That was the goal. He said to me, hold on a few months because I'm opening my own gym. It was one of those, just an interaction, didn't think anything about it. And then about a month later, I got an inbox on Facebook saying, hey, my gym's opening, come check it out. Went to go try my first class. After about 2 months, I was sparring with the guys. And I don't think I've looked back since. I dropped rugby. I think that was my last season of rugby, and then just went straight full-time into this kind of thing. Got provincial colors, SA colors, turned pro in 2015, and haven't looked back.
Okay, cool. And I was actually just going to ask you now, it was actually a nice segue, across Muay Thai and K1, how many belts have you actually won, and how many of those titles still belong to you? Obviously, maybe you relinquished, or because maybe you gave up some. Can you just tell us about that?
So as an amateur pro-am, I think just before I turned pro in 2015, I fought for my first title, which was at CFL, Cape Fight League, which is now, as far as I know, defunct, but fought for the 91 kg pro-am belt against JP Visser. So that was the first time I'd actually, I wasn't headlining, but I was like in the main card fighting for this belt. Awesome to have, I won it on the night, which was cool. So that's actually still sitting up in our gym, because obviously the promotion has gone extinct. So the belt is still floating around there. And then when I turned pro, that was my last amateur fight actually, which was quite interesting. So I had the chance to fight for a belt. Then I turned pro. And since then I was able to fight for the Get in the Ring title at 86 kgs. I think that was in 2016. And then in 2017, I won the Soccer Pro cruiserweight belt. So I've still got those two. They're up in the gym at the moment at the Tilex. And I also in 2018 got a chance to fight for an Intercontinental belt against one of the guys that's actually coming down now, Florian Kruger. Unfortunately, it didn't win. It went 5 rounds. It was an awesome fight. Lost by 1 point decision, and it was split decision. And so looking forward to getting a little bit like getting my own again back into the fight with some of the German guys. So it'll be cool.
Awesome stuff. Thanks for that, man. And then also, I get this question a lot, and there's a saying, there's no stupid question, but just for the fans who don't know, can you confirm why is kickboxing called K1, and are there any slight differences in different parts of the world? Where did that K1 kickboxing thing, all that come from? Just from the expert's point of view, can you just tell us about that?
Yeah, so I'm not exactly 100% sure on the origin in terms of which country it came from, but as far as I understand, K1 and the form we know it now is an amalgamation of all kicking combat. So it's got it's got draws from karate, taekwondo, kickboxing itself. Most of those can either be full contact or in point systems, but I think as far as I understand, it was a body that came together just to put a set of rules to what sort of kicking was allowed.
Oh,
And
okay, makes
obviously
sense.
then with the knee
K1
strikes,
like just all under one, eh?
kick one, it's just all one
Yeah,
sport
okay.
that's got all the kicking in it. But obviously there's a couple of things in there, like the rules have changed over time as well. Like it had to do with clinch rules, how many strikes in a clinch, catching kicks, and different bodies also have different rules about those sort of things. So sometimes you might end up fighting with a promotion or one of the governing bodies that allows you to catch kicks, or maybe allows you more than one strike in the clinch. So that's all quite different, and it's up to the body to tell those rules to the fighters before you actually go in, and it's up to the fighter as well to actually ascertain what the rules are when you are sitting there in your fighter's brief, because sometimes you don't know. I've had Oaks asking about elbows in K1 fights, and everyone just looks at them like, huh? I'm like, okay. But I mean, it happens,
Yeah, our combat sport is still so complicated. Like, and even like in certain federations, there's like people under the same rules. But I mean, if you buy this brand and it's this rules, these rules apply. If you buy that brand, it just can get so
Exactly. And then
complicated
it all comes
sometimes.
down to, what the guys are teaching in the gyms, and the gyms might not necessarily know 100% which bodies they're going to be fighting under. It keeps changing all the time. So, 1 month you might be learning a rule that you can strike as many times as you want in the clinch. And then by the time you come to the fight, you get told, okay, you're actually not allowed to do that. So it's also about adjusting to what the rules of the fight are on the night.
That can be quite intense, because maybe you prepare a certain way, and then maybe that could have been part of your strategy. Then you find out on the last minute you can't maybe elbow, you can't catch, or you can't do this, and then you have to adjust.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's
so that's also why it's good to be as rounded as possible. So it's good to have all those skills, but also have to know how to do those things and not be able to use them. So a lot of the times I tell people, you never know what you're not going to be able to use. And I'm not just talking about in terms of the rules. I mean, what if you break your hand in the first round, or you get kicked in the knee and not able to strike off that anymore? You always need to be able to work to your weaknesses as well.
Correct,
and to be able to do the things that
it's best to be all around and prepared for anything, right?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And then just tell us, Karl, you said you actually the way you got into the sport was you were actually going to take up boxing, and then obviously you found your love in Muay Thai and kickboxing. But have you considered delving into any other combat sports, like now after you've been established as a kickboxer and Muay Thai specialist? Like, would you consider going into boxing or MMA still at this point in time?
Yeah, so a few years ago, once I'd been in kickboxing for quite a while, like maybe 4 or 5 years, I actually did consider getting into MMA. I actually did have an amateur fight in MMA, but it was because there was a cancellation in a K1 fight that I was preparing for, and they told me that they have this MMA guy, and I was like, okay, like I've been training, I was cutting my weight, I was getting down on weight and stuff. So the promotion told me they don't have a K1 fight for me because my opponent's pulled out, but if I want, I can take an MMA fight. So I took it on 2 weeks' notice, try to get as much groundwork and jits and grappling in as I could. But I think after having that fight, it was actually against Block Abanda, and he's currently in the UFC, I think, still, and has actually fought for titles there. So after taking that fight and that 2 weeks of prep that I put in, I kind of thought, my striking's good, I have a good base, I have an understanding. At least I used to watch a lot of MMA, I still do. So I had a good idea of what was going on. But once you're actually in the fight, you realize that it takes a lot of specialization to be able to be very good at each different aspect, especially at something like MMA, even boxing. As soon as you drift into another sport, if you're not focused entirely on, rounding out those skills for that specific combat art, you're going to find yourself wanting. And especially if you are drifting in between the two. So if I want to do Muay Thai and then take MMA and then do boxing on the side kind of thing, as soon as you drift in between them, you start, you have a natural tendency to lean back towards what you're good at. So when it comes to Muay Thai and kickboxing, as soon as I'm boxing, I can feel my legs wanting to go for a kick, So it doesn't matter if I'm moving my head, I'm trying to throw something else. My legs are wanting to move in a certain way. My hips are squared off in a certain way. It's the same for MMA. If I'm striking, like I've got a certain upright style, which is not very good for MMA as well. So even though I sort of thought about it, I gave it a little bit of thought, and I did also, train in those other things and practice a little bit. I just decided to stick with what I was good at and just to go more intensely into the Muay Thai side of things rather than to drift out. And then also, I think one of the things that the BSA had a ruling at the time, it was also maybe around 2015, 16 when I had just turned pro, that if you were going to do boxing, you couldn't do any other martial arts. So because obviously my initial was to do the K1 and the Muay Thai, I didn't want to not be able to do that. A lot of the guys just, they just flaunt the rule and they don't really care about it. But that is actually like a ruling that BSA so it has, that you can't cross over, or you're not supposed to.
Okay, cool. Thanks, man. Yeah, that's just so funny because I hear so many stories of people complaining of BSA and then just to think that they were so strict that time. But I mean, some sketchy stuff happening at some of these events also. But anyway, that's a story for another day.
I think what also happens is that it's also down to the fighter themselves. So for me, I would want to be as sticking to the rules as much as possible. So if I signed the contract and it said, now that you're part of BSA, you may not do this anymore, then I'll try and stick to that. Just because I don't want to be stepping on the wrong toes and
it comes down to the individual also.
Myself. Yeah, so a lot of at the time I remember thinking, hey, there's so many guys, this guy signed for BSA, but now he's doing a K1 fight and doing MMA, and I'm like, no one really seems to check it. No one's policing it. So there is room for that to be able to do that, but I just wouldn't have felt comfortable doing that. So I just decided, don't.
Okay.
Do what you know.
Yeah, for sure. And then just for those who don't know, Karl Bergemann also happens to be an ultra marathon runner and a lifesaver, I'm not mistaken. Hence where Baywatch comes from. Is that true?
Yeah. So that's where it came from. That was actually also a nickname given to me at rugby because I used to miss a lot of the preseason games because the lifesaving season was in summer. The guys would always be like, well, where's Karl? And then someone told him, he's being Baywatch somewhere up in Bergemann. He had a competition, and then it stuck. So then it was quite funny because I even used to have people calling my name in the stands, chanting. Baywatch became a thing, okay. And then I just carried it with me into the Muay Thai and the K1, so it just stuck.
Okay, no, that's cool.
But and last year I did my first ultra marathon, a trail run. I went and ran. It was supposed to be 62 km, but I ended up doing 69 because I actually got lost and didn't have the map on my watch and stuff. So,
it's intense.
So yeah, I've added that to my resume now.
Nice. And then just tell me, in terms of now on the side, now you're doing all those extra sports also. How much does that actually help you in terms of your cardio also? In being in the fight game, because you can be the most talented boxer or stand-up specialist, but if you don't have a tank, it can all after 2 rounds it can all mean nothing.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm a firm believer in cross-training, doing different sports to help the others. So one of the things I find is that my Muay Thai actually helps my running, just as my running helps my Muay Thai.
Okay, can you explain that part? How does Muay Thai actually help the running?
Yeah, so I was going to say now, a lot of the strength work that we do, especially when it comes to things like skipping and just the way that you stand, staying on your toes, that really strengthens the legs and does different things. The same way that if I'm doing CrossFit and I'm doing certain leg exercises, back exercises, arm exercises, I find that they feed into each other. And it's also up to the individual again to try and feed the specific sports. So my running definitely helps my Muay Thai, both with the endurance, helps with the cardio, but as soon as I'm not skipping and I'm not doing the strength work and I'm not doing Muay Thai, I actually feel it in my running. My legs feel a lot more flat. I don't have as much bounce in my legs. So that could be incidental. It could just be something that I'm feeling. But I like to think that cross-training helps these individual sports as well. And just because, again, it drowns you out. So yeah,
okay,
I like to do that as well. So I'm even now in camp, I'm out running in the mountains here in Stellenbosch, and then I'm doing CrossFit, and if I can go for a swim, I'll do that as well. Just try and mix it up. But obviously, with the focus being on the technique and training as much as possible in the Muay Thai.
For sure. You just mentioned Stellenbosch now also, and the last time we spoke, I think Karl, the academic was in full swing. Can you just tell us also, for those who are not aware also, and I don't know if for those who did not read my last article, your update on your studies, how's that going? Just to confirm, I think you'll be landed a 3-year bursary to complete your PhD. in history under the biography of Uncharted People Project, a collaboration between the economics and history department. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And how's things going there?
Yeah, so it's going well. It's been a little bit difficult this last month and a bit to try and marry the two together. I guess I wear quite a lot of different hats. So, you know, for me being a Muay Thai fighter, it's quite fun or interesting to see people's reaction when they find out that I'm also an academic, but I'm a researcher and I'm working for the project. I'm currently in my third year now, so at the moment it's like a lot of writing, a lot of reworking of chapters that I've done previously, but I'm also doing a lot of presenting. So like I often have to tell my coach, like, listen, I can't make this training session because I've got a presentation to go do. Or like last week, Wednesday, we actually had like an opening at an art gallery. Myself and an artist have collaborated to produce some artworks in Stellenbosch at a gallery that has picked it up, and it's also expanding. So like, yeah, it's really quite interesting being like an academic and working on something completely different to what most people are used to for fighters. I don't really know what most people think fighters do, but I guess a lot of the time, even back then when I was doing my master's, I used to, you know, people used to make jokes about me being like a fighting historian. And I think one of my friends even made a meme at one stage that said something like that I would educate people with my fists or something.
Just obviously, yeah, you were saying?
So yeah, it's going well. Like I'm pressing on, but like I said, it's quite difficult to marry this, especially if I'm training 2 or 3 times a day at the moment. It's I try and squeeze the work in between because I know that I have to get it done, and this is my third year now. So my mantra at the moment is just about progress, and you know, not trying to be a perfectionist, just making sure that I'm always putting in the work. It's a similar mantra that I have when I'm doing my training and stuff. I always just try and focus on doing something rather than nothing, and just progressing and working towards a goal.
Okay, cool. My actual next question was going to be about that. I mean, you spoke about all the hats you have and how you balance your training and all that, but I mean, thanks, you actually answered that now. And then just for the viewers who don't know, for those who aren't aware, Karl and myself were actually colleagues at independent media, and I just wanted to ask you, do you still do any work for community newspapers, any freelancing, or do you still help them out in any way? And shout out for Art, shout out all the guys there at Community Sports. Much love.
So I'm not doing like any writing for them at the moment, but I mean, you know, we've always had our ears to the ground. I still have a very good relationship with the guys. I chat to them on Facebook quite often, and if there's anything coming up, if I spot anything or know of anything happening, you know, I've always got my feelers out in different sports as well. And sometimes people will contact me still, like asking me about if I still work for the newspapers, and I'll just direct them to, you know, or whoever needs to follow up on. So yeah, I wouldn't say I'm as involved in that anymore. I'd say I'm more focused on the things that are currently happening in my life, but you know, always like a soft spot in my heart for that place. So yeah, it's always nice to be chatting with the guys and just reminisce about it a lot. It was a good time to be working for the papers there.
Yeah, one time. And then taking all into consideration your studies, and obviously we're getting, as nature, David, we're not getting younger, and not to sound cynical or negative in any ways, but just in terms of your sporting career, what are your objectives still within the Muay Thai fraternity? Are you just fighting out to have fun? Do you still have goals in terms of titles, or what is Karl wanting within Muay Thai?
So it's quite strange because this is one of those things that just comes in dips and waves. So there's times where, you know, you're so motivated by these big end goals. And for me, it's always been like the steps that are always right in front of me. It's always been something that I'm not trying to focus on anything too long term. So like when I first got into this, I never even thought I was going to be a fighter. I wanted to get fit, and that was just about it. Then I thought, cool, let me try and take on my first fight. Then it became, let me look at provincial colors, SA colors, traveling overseas, maybe turning pro, getting some belts. I mean, it's a pretty crazy progression to go from not even wanting to fight to now being a professional fighter and taking on challenges whenever they come. But yeah, I still have goals. I mean, there's a lot of times where I've been through phases where I'm thinking, maybe I'm done, maybe I can, you know, pack it all away. But I had a friend who actually put it so perfectly the other day, and this was through lifesaving as well. So I ended up doing a competition with the old boys, and he said something along the lines of, he thought he was ready to pack it all in, but he says before he goes, they have to come and take it from him. So, you know, if he's the champion, he's supposed to do whatever he wants. So he's not just going to let it, you know, drift off slowly into the night. I think for me at the moment, my goals aren't necessarily as maybe personal as they used to be, although there are a few big ones still coming up on the horizon. So like because I've been ranked now in the WMO and the WBC in the top 20 and top 10 for WMO. I'm actually ranked number 7 and number 20 by the WBC. That's for the Muay Thai organizations. World ranked as a cruiserweight. Those rankings were only released now in January. So once I saw that, and getting the information from my crew, and people were telling me, "Hey, geez, you're making it in the top ranks of the world." Firstly, that opens up opportunities for me to fight some of the best guys around the world, and possibly to line up some titles, maybe some world titles or some big international title fights. So that's awesome. But one of the other big things that I'm sort of gearing up towards, at least in my mind, is to be a fighter that other people can see. Look, there is someone doing something on the world stage. There is something in Muay Thai for us to do. And when I look at some of the kids coming through, I'm like, there's guys 16, 17 years old, guys in their 20s that still have long careers ahead of them. And for me, it's awesome if they can see someone actually doing something, achieving something. You don't have to be winning everything. No one's going to win everything and win all the big titles and stuff. But just to see that there's a spot for South Africans, there's a platform for us. We can compete with some of the best in the world. We can go onto the world stage and actually win titles. I mean, we have guys that have done this before. If you think of the likes of like Nedo, Gumba, and Jared Rothwell, and we have guys that compete on the world stage all the time. Maybe we don't know about them as much because you only really know about it when you're in it. But it's just about creating that platform, just seeing that like the guys coming up, and just when they see you and they see that you are doing something, that already to me is like a goal. So it doesn't necessarily have to be my personal ambition to go and win titles, although that's still there. I think another big one for me is just to show that we can do this. We do belong on the world stage.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for that, man. And just to confirm, Karl, man, I was told by someone in the MMA fraternity that there are apparently at the moment 2 Muay Thai federations in SA, one based in Pretoria and the one that I think Nick is running. Can you just confirm exactly, elaborate, is that correct? And is the one a pirate league? How does this exactly work? Because is there not only supposed to be one?
Yeah, it's the same as in any other sport. K1 has a bunch of governing bodies. Boxing has a million governing bodies. You see them. That's why there's so many different belts and stuff. So I think up in Joburg, what's running up there is IFMA, which is the International Federation of Muay Thai Associations. So I think they are primarily a amateur association. I think they do have a professional arm. So I'm not too sure what the rulings are up there. And we are running under SAMA, which is the South African Muay Thai organization, which is connected to the WMO, which is the World Muay Thai organization. So yeah, it's all about affiliations. There's multiple world governing bodies. You've got the WBC Muay Thai, WMO, WMC, and there's a whole bunch of others as well, like WKTT. Just throw a bunch of letters out there.
Just call it the alphabet.
A governing body. Yeah. So there's a lot of different governing bodies, and it's all about who the gyms are associated with, and that funnels into what sort of world titles you can fight for. But the WMO is like one of the big 3, and they're growing exponentially. Like I do follow them on Instagram and on socials, and just seeing how they're popping up all over the world, and they're doing really well at the moment to grow the sport. And also, I think coming out of the pandemic, it's quite a difficult thing to do, to try and have gyms affiliate. So if the guys up in Joburg are affiliating to a different body, I'm not necessarily involved at like the head of all these things. I'm a fighter. I just if the fight comes my way and I'm affiliated, then so be it. But I guess there's a lot of politics at play as well, about who do you join with, who do you want to follow, what ruling does it give you. And I think some of the guys are obviously quite intrigued or worried about where it's going to go in terms of Olympic affiliation and so on. But for me, it's always just about getting the biggest fight that I can, going out there and just doing my gym pride and making my friends and family proud. And that's the only thing I'm really worried about. So
awesome.
Yeah, not really about affiliations.
Cool. Thanks for that, man. And then getting to the Thaiholics event now, I think that's taking place on the 12th of March, right? Grand West, is that the Sun exhibit?
Yeah, so it's at the market hall, which is on the other side. That's where they normally do like the dance.
Oh, where the weigh-ins and stuff for EFC take place also. That's okay,
so
cool.
So that's market hall, the carpeted floors in there. And it's the first time we're going to be having like spectators at an event since 2019, which is actually blows my mind just to think that for the last 2 years, we haven't even had any crowds. Even though there have been a few fights happening since last year, it's going to be awesome. Just even though it's a smaller crowd capacity because of the new allowances, it's still going to be awesome just to have some people there, to have some friends in the crowd. My wife's going to be there, my brother's going to be there. The only person who won't be there is my mom, who never watches my fights.
And then also, just to confirm, you fighting Germany's Enrico Rocha. How do you pronounce it?
I think it's Enrico Roga.
Okay.
With a hard G. Yeah, and he's like a multiple ISKA world champion in K1. I was actually scheduled to fight him when I went over in 2018, but he tore the rotator cuff.
That was the Get in the Ring event, eh?
Yeah, so Get in the Ring in Hamburg brought over a South African team, which included myself, Adrian van Wyk, who is the current Soccer Africa pro light heavyweight champion, and Rafal Wozniak. We went over there to go fight. It was pretty awesome. I actually headlined that event as well against Florian Kruger. It's quite interesting. Like I fought Adrian a few times now, but obviously on the local scene, and then I fought against Florian, and they're now going to be fighting each other. I think at like 86 kgs, and they also on the main card.
Is that Adrian Sparks, eh, from Paul?
Sparks. Yeah. So Sparks
okay.
is fighting. He's actually busy like training with us at the moment. So we've built up quite a nice team. So our sparring is getting really good. It's nice for me to have like someone who's a little bit bigger to spar with, because otherwise I end up sparring with all the guys who are like 70 to 80 Ks. And that's like, you know, I mean, I get to work on a lot of defense and try and pick up my speed, but it's nice to have someone a little bit bigger to throw down with. We've also been working with the guys from Iron Tiger. So it's also been really awesome. Just what this event has done is brought a lot of the gyms together. Like there's a lot of collaboration that I've been seeing. I don't know if you've been following any of the gyms at all, but like it's just cool to see guys going to other gyms to go spar and helping each other out. And you know, you can't always find the right sparring partner in your gym for your size or the opponent that you're facing. But there's, you know, as soon as the guys collaborate and you pick up from another gym, you learn so much. They're doing different techniques. They're going to teach you things. So it's really awesome just to have the guys actually collaborating. It's something you don't actually see too often in sport in general. I think a lot of the time the guys are quite isolated and try and keep all their techniques to themselves. And the only time you really see that is when maybe you are joining a provincial team or something like that. But just for now, yeah, seeing this, it's almost like a small rebirth of Muay Thai in Cape Town at the moment, especially, and also having some guys from Durban come down. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, I think we must just build this momentum now. It mustn't stop, because it's really at a healthy spot, a place right now where we can. I think that if we just look after it, it can become very big. Eh?
Yeah, that's the thing. And next, also, you know, worked really hard down the scenes, obviously, to have fights planned for guys, so we can start working on plans going forward, like looking at how to build your record, build up to certain events. You know, I think he's got one plan for May, he's got one plan for July, bringing guys in from overseas just to grow the sport and to show that we as Cape Townians have an international platform. We have the fighters that can fight these guys from overseas. Yeah, it's just it's amazing to be part of it right at the beginning, even though for me, like, this is probably towards the end of my career. It's still another like launching platform, helping this platform to launch itself as well, which is really fun.
And then the cool thing is, I mean, Muay Thai has got, I mean, you think of the movie Kickboxer and so many others, it's got such a glamorous element to it also, man. You know, the music, the culture, everything around it. So it really can become a culture in Cape Town also if we nurture it properly, you know.
Of course, and if you've ever spent time overseas, you know, not necessarily being a fighter, but anyone who's been to Thailand, I think we're in the day and age, or maybe not in the last 2 years, but prior to COVID, so many people were traveling to Thailand, traveling to Asia, traveling even to places like Australia and America, where Thailand is where Muay Thai, so it's pretty big. But going to Thailand, experiencing their culture, and maybe going to go watch a fight, you just see how passionate people are about it, and you know, trying to take that and put it into like a local scene is so awesome. And I love the way that, you know, we're getting to do the Y crew, we're doing traditional sealing of the ring, the music is playing in the background, and yeah, it's just awesome. We wear, like, you know, the traditional headgear, the monkol. Some of the guys are allowed to wear pajits, which is also cool because we're now sanctioned by a world governing body which allows us to do that. You know, when guys try and take their Muay Thai roots into K1 and any other sports, it was often like frowned upon or not allowed, like in the first place. So it's nice to be able to have a body that actually supports that you are, you know, taking in some of that aspect, especially for the guys who have traveled overseas, who have learned from their crews over there and have different techniques, and just to show it on a local platform.
Yeah, and then I just wanted to ask you also, Karl, and you said obviously now, which is great, the fans are going to be back in the arena. What is the capacity going to be? I mean, how many fans are you guys going to be allowing, or Nick going to be allowing into the market hall?
Yeah, so I think it's based on the venue capacity. Obviously, it's less than half. I think Grandest is pretty strict on what they're allowing there. So I think we're looking at a crowd capacity of around 350, and then there's obviously, that's because the capacity has to allow for staff, fighters, emergency crew.
Don't forget us media also, please. Eh?
You guys as well. Yeah, so I think it's 350. So it's not a huge crowd, but to me it's a start. It's a way to roll out to show that.
I'll take that. Yo,
even
even 100 people around me. I mean, in
exactly.
Arena like that. I mean, you just miss it so much, man.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's also like a good way to start getting things back to normal. I think there's a lot of speculation happening at the moment about, mask mandates and how many people are out at sports. We've just had the announcement this week that Cape Town Stadium is going to be hosting the Rugby World Cup, the Sevens World Cup. So that means they're going to be opening up for multiple amount of people. I think it's something like 60,000 tickets were sold already. So with that in mind, it tells me that there's like an idea that we might be opening up soon to start having these sort of things happen, even though that's going to be again in our next summer. A lot of the times I'm telling people, let's just wait for this winter, see what happens if there's another wave, check hospitalization, maybe like another
just be realistic.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So you don't want to jump too far ahead. I mean, even the fact that events are happening at the moment is amazing. It's just, that's a lot of risk on the part of promotions. That's just in terms of fighting, but any sports in general, like the fact that events are happening, the guys are putting the structures in place to have these things actually happen. It takes guts to do that, because at any moment, you could have rules come down and you're in a clamping, and you're not, all of a sudden you put so much into it, but you're not allowed to have events anymore. So so kudos to the guys who are hosting events, who are putting sports together, who are trying to keep the momentum going. And I'm just happy to be there, to have a crowd, even if it's a small one. It's a start, and we'll see where we go from here.
Yeah, I spoke to the UFC Brains Rest today, and I think even they are playing it safe. They see it works for them. They are hosting at the Performance Institute in Paul's off Joburg, and it's, I mean, even though they can have more people, they actually just going to keep it. They playing it. I mean, they're playing it safe and playing it smart. They don't have to spend too much, copious amounts of money, like booking out venues and then taking a risk also of flying. They're going to stay at their home base and then just until further notice. So I think, like you said, we just need to, they playing it smart, and like you said, we need to, in terms of Nick also, maybe just wait until the winter passes and let's see from there.
Yeah, I think also what he wanted to do is, just because we're having these guys coming and it's an international fight, it's going to be really cool for them to also experience a little bit of a South African crowd. When we went over there, we fought in a venue that was actually like a theater that's called the Mayor Theater. Awesome place, probably about 3,000 people, downlights, nice and dark. The whole venue was aircon. It was just like quite an experience. So I think it's also nice for visiting guys to come down and see that there is passion here. The guys want to be at the fights. It's going to be nice to have like some people ringside just to make the vibe of the event.
Yeah, for sure. And then you spoke of the energy, and fighting in front of a crowd also. What is the biggest crowd you've ever fought in front of? Was it at Get in the Ring, or like the most?
Yeah, so I think that Get in the Ring crowd, probably about 3,000 people. But in Cape Town, we've even had like, maxing out venue capacity at like the old CFLs and stuff. I remember the one where we had 1,000 people capacity and we ended up doing like 1,200, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're packing people into like a sports hall and the reverberation of the crowd and so like, it's almost like it's frothing, it's seething right up against the ring. So it's like, it's awesome to have that experience and just to have people, the energy that the people get from the fight, because, for a lot of people, they're not involved in the sport necessarily. So for us, it becomes so normal to go to events. We go to multiple events a year and we see so many fights that even though we still get excited about it, it doesn't have that raw intensity to it. But when you watch anyone in the crowd, like you can see it's like it's raw emotion. They're so invested in what's happening, especially if it's a friend or family members, the people get so into it, like the excitement is just on another level. So yeah, it's just great to have people back again.
Yeah, I think combat sport, it's just you need the fans there, man. Just like you said, that raw emotion also, man. It plays such a big part of the entire event also, eh?
Yeah. And it's also cool, like, a lot of the feedback that you get in a fight actually comes from the crowd. You don't necessarily always hear like the individual things that people are shouting, but you feel that shift in intensity.
Yeah, that back and forth.
Shots, that ooh, that kind of thing. Like that actually gears you towards what you're doing in the fight. And if you're doing something right and the crowd's like appreciating it, you end up knowing that, okay, cool, I'm on the right trajectory here. But if you don't have the crowd, it's like, what am I doing? Like, I feel like I'm winning here. Like, I'm definitely, it's like a big sparring match. Like, I'm winning, but there's no energy flow. It's one person going at another person. That's about it.
Karl, just tell us also, what do you feel are your opponent's most notable attributes or tools? I mean, I think you know your opponent already. What can we expect from him?
Yeah, so one of the things I feel about him is that he is tough. He's a type of person that he's super gritty. So he's like a type of fighter who fights up close. He gets in very tight, got very powerful strikes, and he's got a very good defense. So it's like very difficult to fight against someone like that. He's a pressure fighter, and it's difficult to mimic that in sparring as well. But I feel like I'm also the type of person that, I try to adjust to what my opponent's doing. So I am able to work up the back foot and so on if I need to. I'm able to put pressure on when I need to. So for me, it's more about like a feeling out process. So I don't like to go into a fight thinking too much about this is what he's going to do and this is what I'm going to do. I like to feel like I have a general understanding of what he maybe will do or what he's good at, but I also have a general understanding of how I can counter that if it does happen. So yeah, so I think for him, he's just like a really gritty fighter, very quick strikes, and he's quite, even though he's got a very simple base, he also has some very flashy moves that just come out of nowhere. So for me, it's just about staying as sharp as possible, being as aware as possible of what's going on around me, not shelling up too much and just allowing him to strike. And yeah, just staying sharp.
I mean, I just wanted to, thanks for that. I just wanted to ask you, I don't think I've ever watched you live yet. Only I think on YouTube also some of your fights, but what would you consider? This will be the first time now. Don't worry, I'll be there.
Wow, that's crazy.
And cool. I wanted to come to the last event, so Nick said no media's allowed, so you must blame him. But anyway, I wanted to ask you, what do you consider yourself as in terms of a fighter? Would you say you're more of a counter attacker, like you said, you like to suss things out and then first, or like stay in the pocket, or work on seeking out defense or working out your defense first? What would you discover without giving too much away? What do you pride yourself on?
Yeah, you know what's strange that. Yeah, it's strange that in my mind, I often feel like I'm the type of person that sits on the back foot and counters and, looks for openings. But when I watch my fights back, I'm often the guy that's putting the pressure on, even if I am, sitting in the pocket or sitting back a bit. It's weird. It's like when you go in there, as much as you have a game plan, you often switch off, and I find what I end up doing is pressuring my opponents. So I think it's important for me to just try and think a lot more like while I'm in this fight, especially with such a high level opponent. Like this guy is world level. He's fought. I know he's had like over 200 karate fights, around 50 K1 fights, and he's really, really high level. 2-time world K1 champion, 2-time world karate champion. It's just about being adaptable, sticking to my own game plan, and not getting carried away. Like, fortunately, I have Nick in my corner, and I always. Whenever I go a little bit like too heated, I'll just hear that no, and as soon as I hear that no, I know, okay, cool. You need to take a step back and just calm down a bit, because
he knows, he can read you.
He knows already what I'm about to do. Like, as I step in and I'm about to throw a wild haymaker, you'll be like no, and I just know, okay, cool, okay, I know what I'm doing now. Just calm down a bit. So yeah, it's more about staying aware. Just for me. I try and do this in every fight. I just try and stay as sharp as possible, try and use my movement, try and use my range, try and use whatever skills I have, and yeah, just try and find openings where I can.
Man, I can't wait, Karl. I'm getting so excited now for this event. Can you just tell us, are there still tickets available? If so, where can our viewers get them?
I think there's only like a handful of tickets left. I think the last time I saw there were about 20 something, and they're available on Cricket. So if you just search for Thaiholics Fight Promotion on Cricket, you should be able to find them.
Yeah, I think you send me the link. I'll just put the link in.
Okay, cool. I'll do that for you. And yeah, and then I mean, we're only less than 2 weeks away, so it's awesome just to see the guys getting a lot sharper now. Also having trained with so many different guys that are taking part in this event. If I look at like 6 weeks ago, where everyone was kind of like, you know, coming out of the December mode, thinking, geez, how do I get myself back into this? How do I cut my weight? And, you know, and now you see everyone's firing and sharp. And I think the excitement of having an event of this stature, you know, with guys coming from overseas, we've got 6 pro fights, we've got a women's national fight, which is the first time I've ever heard of anything like that, you know, like a WMO sanctioned national professional belt on the line for Devon and Yolandi. And then we've got like these 5 German guys coming in, and we've got high level, like some of the best guys from around South Africa, you know, and I'm not just saying that because I'm on the card. Like, I mean, it's guys that people know from TV, it's guys that people know from having followed K1 in the sports in general. Just facing off against some really tough opponents from Germany as well. And I mean, we haven't really punted this too much, but a lot of the guys there that are coming down here are either German champions or world champions or European champions or some intercontinental champions. So it's like we're trying to put on a really high level performance here, and hopefully our guys come through with like the wins. You know, we want to show that South Africans deserve a spot on the world stage, and I think that's really the biggest message that we're just trying to put out here.
Awesome stuff. Well, guys, there you had it. You heard from Karl Bergemann, Karl Baywatch Bergemann himself. Be sure to check out the links. I'll be posting it on the video. And Karl, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it. All the best with your further preparation. And we will speak to you soon, man. God bless you.
You too. Thank you so much. Ciao, guys.
Cheers, man. Thanks, Karl. Bye-bye.
Ciao.